This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Covel. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. Today on the podcast, I have Richard Noble. Richard likes to go very fast. In fact, this Scottish entrepreneur held the land speed record between 1983 and 1997. His current team is aiming to go over 1,000 miles an hour on the ground in a car. Awesome story, awesome entrepreneur, lots of passion. I just love these types of conversations.
Hello, is that Michael?
It is. Richard, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Michael. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Where are you?
I'm in Saigon today.
Oh, you're in Saigon. Lucky guy. It's supposed to be a lovely country. I know I've been there.
It is. It is quite nice. The people are lovely.
Good.
It's good stuff. Hey, listen, I want to jump right in. You got a big anniversary coming up here, so to speak.
That's right. Yeah, 30th anniversary of the World Land Speed Record. Yeah.
Okay, so I have two. I have my first question, because there's just not many people on the planet that have the feeling of going on the ground over 600 miles an hour, and you've done it more than once.
That's right. I've been over 600 miles an hour 11 times. Andy Green's been over, he's been over 700 miles an hour, of course, so he's one up on me. So I'm still the second fastest on Earth, so how's that?
It's pretty good. My question from a novice standpoint, because I'm thinking of my exhilarations of speed, and they're very minor, maybe on the highways outside of Vegas going over 100, maybe being on a small Gulfstream jet and getting to 45,000 feet very quick. That's about the extent of it. So right. What does it feel? Can you even begin to describe 600 plus miles an hour, over 1,000 kilometers per hour? Can you even begin to describe that to someone that has not sat in that seat where you sat?
Yeah. I think the important thing to understand is it's not an emotional experience. If you are looking for an emotional experience, if you're looking for a high, Michael, then basically you're the wrong man for the job. The whole idea is to try and make it as boring as you possibly can so that you can concentrate entirely on what you're doing. And so if I take you through a thrust to run, you'd start, say, at the north end of the Black Rock Desert. You've got a 13-mile track. You've got a track width, which is just 50 foot wide, and you've got to stay within that track. And you start the huge engine, the Rolls-Royce Avon 302. You start it up, and you hold the car on the brakes with your left foot. All these cars are left foot braked. So you hold it on the brakes with your left foot, and then you wait for the aeroplane, which is flying up and down the track. Because remember, it's a long track. You can only see to the horizon, which is 2.5 miles ahead. And the airplane is checking to make sure we haven't got anybody on the track. Once we know we're okay, we've got the signal to go, then you hold the car on the brakes with the left foot. You accelerate the engine with the right foot to 92% of maximum RPM. If you go to 93%, it'll go with the wheels locked. So that's not very clever. So hold it there, do your last minute checks. Once you're okay, brakes off with your left foot, slam accelerate with your right foot, and aim to get into the afterburner within 30 feet. The sooner you get into the afterburner, the better, because that gives you the big boost and the big power. You're running on aluminium wheels. You've got no tires, so directional stability is not good. So between 0 and about 300 miles an hour, the car squirrels all over the place. And you've got to work really hard to keep the front wheels in front of the back wheels and keep the whole show within the lane. Because if you leave that lane, you'll never get back into it again. So you have to abort the run. Then you reach the sort of transition speed, which is about 300 to 350 miles an hour, when the thrust to fins really start providing the directional stability, which is great. So once you've got that, then the car seems to settle down quite a lot. And 350 to 550 is boring. It's very much the same thing, except You're just going a lot faster. 550 starts to get really exciting because around then you see the shock wave build up on the intake, just above the intake in the nose. A great white shock wave stands up there as the airflow locally goes supersonic. And at 615, you get the same thing over the wheel arches, because again the airflow is going supersonic there. And at these speeds, it becomes really, very interesting because I've been doing a long time, and so consequently your mental processes speed right up. And so everything happens in very, very slow motion. You've got plenty of time. You can see every single detail on the track come up and go under the car at 650 miles an hour. It's a very relaxed process. You go through the measured mile, and that's when the fun really starts, because you've got to come back very, very gently on the throttle. You've got to cool the engine for 3 seconds, which seems like an eternity. And only then can you switch off the fuel to the engine and push the button on the steering wheel, which fires the brake parachutes. And as soon as that comes out, you've got 6G deceleration, massive deceleration. So you're losing speed at 130 odd miles an hour per second. And you get an extraordinary effect called the somatographic illusion, which upsets your inner ears and causes you to think as if you're driving straight down to the center of the earth. You've lost, at that point, you've more or less lost control of the car, but it doesn't matter because you've got the parachute on the back, acting like a very big sea anchor, so it's holding you straight. So then you're down to 400 miles an hour, and at 400 miles an hour, it seems so slow, you want to get out and walk alongside. And then finally you're down to 200 miles an hour, you bring the wheel brakes in and bring it to a halt, and then you reach across and get your notebook out, and you write down everything you can possibly remember. And then very shortly the team is alongside you, and then we're ready to either do a turnaround or to take the car back to its garage. So that's it, really, Michael.
So I'm hearing in you, though, there's a lot of, it's all process. You're not really thinking about the outcome. You are worried about every process that you know has to be undertaken in the correct method. And then hopefully the outcome will be a higher speed than maybe the last time, but it's all about process.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. I mean, if you're starting to get a high out of it, then you're the wrong person. You'll be a risk to the project. So it's a job of a minor test pilot, I think is probably the best way of describing it.
So I did see the headline, though, and I think you're famously quoted for this, that why did you do this? And you said, for Britain and for the hell of it. Now, I imagine there's a little bit more to the story than that.
No, the interesting thing was that we did this in the 1980s, and in the 1970s, Britain was in a terrible mess. The country was in a complete mess. We weren't succeeding at anything. It was a disaster. And it was really nice to be able to do something for the country and sort of really lift people's spirits. And it got a really good reception. People were actually thrilled. And, of course, the Brits have a long association with the world land speed record, really right through from the 1920s. And then in the 1960s, we built the wrong sort of car, and our good American friends took it away from us.
Let me jump into something. This is something I talk in my podcast a lot. It's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is the word entrepreneur. And I have a feeling that's near and dear to you, and probably just the fiber of you. So when did you get this entrepreneurial bug? How did you know you had it?
I don't know if it's a bug. Basically, what I got was a land speed record bug. Really, I was really interested in that really since I was the age of 6. And there comes a time in life, Michael, when you suddenly decide, well, if it really means so much to you, you better go and do it. And then, of course, then it's a sheer battle to try and convince people that it's worth doing, and worth putting resources in. And to get thrust to the world land speed record, I mean, it took an awful long time. It took 6 years of hard work. Well, the whole program took 9 years, and the efforts of about 200 companies. So, it's an act of a desperate individual, I think, really.
Okay. I got to step back. 6 years old, desperate individual. Okay, this is a little bit of British sarcasm here. So, what did you know at 6 years old? Why did you know this speed record at 6?
Well, it's a funny thing. Basically, we're talking about 1952. It's just after the war. Britain is a really boring place. There's nothing very interesting going on for a young kid to get excited by. And my dad was in the army. And he was based up in Inverness in the north of Scotland. And one day he decided he'd take us for a drive. In those days, you went for a drive as entertainment. Today, you don't go for a drive for entertainment, but that's what you did in those days. And we drove around the north banks of Loch Ness, which is a really beautiful place. And we came to a place called Drum the Drocket, and there at the little pier was John Cobb's jet boat Crusader. And he was going for the world water speed record. And I saw this thing. And if you have a look at pictures on it on Google, you'll see that, it's the most fantastic looking boat. I saw this and I just thought, wow, that's really special. And then, I don't know, I suppose the bug bit, I started studying. I wasn't really interested in the water, but when I discovered there was a land speed record, which was a lot faster, I then became really interested. And so I spent my adult years really sort of studying this, buying all the books, reading whatever I could on it. And then eventually, of course, comes to a point where you've got to go and do it.
I think, it's inspirational. I mean, in a different sort of way, I've been an entrepreneur, but not at the high risk. I mean, it's risky in a way, but that I've done things, but not risky in a life-threatening way. So, yeah. But you probably don't view the risk that you've taken as life-threatening, do you really?
No, you're absolutely right. I think the thing that happens, the process is really very simple. What you do is you start an organization to do it, because it's a team thing. It's not an individual thing. It's a team thing. You build up a fantastic relationship with the team, and your team operates on the basis that if they don't like what's happening, they can walk away from it and leave it. And so there's a tremendous team ethos to get the thing right, to have thought it all through, to have done the research, and to get to a point where you believe you've really got a very good chance of actually putting it off. And that's the crucial thing. So you're part of an organization that's moving forward. You've done a massive amount of research. You've done a lot of development. And eventually, the organization pops out the top with a world record, having developed both the driver and, of course, the car and the team.
So let me follow up on this idea of higher risk. And like I said, not necessarily just in land speed records, but the idea of higher risk in life and society today, where I think society in many ways, you see so many efforts to minimize risk. And to me, it seems like the other side of the coin, it's a very fertile ground. And so how did you come to this idea about high risk having these rewards and being a place that you want it to be in the high risk space, so to speak?
I think it becomes really very interesting because, well, first of all, in terms of sort of British society, I think, or British culture, we've lost the risk. We don't take risks anymore, and consequently, we don't go anywhere. And the converse of not taking risks is that we study history and we praise those who did take risks way back in history. So we're going through a sort of phase in Britain where we're praising all the old inventors and the people who fought in World War II and so on and so forth. Pretty soon we're going to run out of material for that part. But it's very, very interesting. So consequently, we don't take risk. And because we don't take risk, we don't advance at all. We need people like Steve Jobs, who, was just absolutely outstanding entrepreneur of his decade, his time. It's very difficult to get people to work like that and understand that. And so with our organization, and for instance, in Bloodhound, we have 60 people working. We've got to develop a risk culture where people are quite happy to take risk and are encouraged to take risk. And it becomes very interesting. It takes people about 3 or 4 months to sort of change from being working in a hierarchical organization where they're told what to do to working into one of our organizations where they decide what they're going to do.
I've seen some comments that you've made talking about security and people's desire for comfort. And I think if you focus only on security and comfort, you maybe miss one of the most important things in life, which is passion. Waking up each day and saying, let's go take it on. And I mean, you're a great example of that.
You wake up every morning and say, how the hell are we going to get through today, Michael?
Yeah, but that's still a great feeling, right? I mean, who wants to wake up and just...
I tell you what is a great feeling is that when you start a day and you think, oh my God, how the hell are we going to get through this? We've got so many problems and so many difficulties. And then somewhere along the line, something magic happens and one of these magic people says, yeah, we're going to join. We're going to be part of you. And that is a fantastic moment. So for all the months of crap and difficulty and hassle and time, just occasionally you meet these amazing people. And there is one person at Rolls-Royce who decided that Rolls-Royce was going to sponsor the project. And I went to this meeting and I was told everything was going to turn to ashes and, we had to open hell. And the man just hit the table with his fist and said, right, we're doing it, and committed the whole of Rolls-Royce, which is just brilliant. So just occasionally you're very fortunate to meet these people.
Okay, but when you're in that room, and I know you've talked about this too, the idea of your passion requires capital. So what are some of the things that you've learned about motivating people to get them to come over to your perspective?
Right. Well, let's get that right. We don't have any capital, Michael. It's a big mistake. Capital means shareholders. Capital means banks. And that's where the problems start. Because if you're running a very high-risk program like, for instance, like Bloodhound or ThrustSSC or Thrust2, the shareholders get very frightened because they've never really been in situations which we find ourselves in. And so you don't want shareholders. So basically, it's a revenue business, and you've simply got to make the money every month. It's as simple as that.
And there's never, I've seen this also in your writings too, the idea, I see it in America. I'm seeing actually quite a bit of the entrepreneurial zeal in Asia all this year, and you're mentioning it a little bit in Britain, the idea of giving up. And I know it's kind of retracking on some of the things that I've already brought up, but how can we, just in our simple little conversation here, what can I get you to trigger on that can get people to understand why you don't give up? Why do you not give up?
Well, let's give an example. We had a fascinating situation with the ThrustSSC car, which was eventually the first car to break the sound barrier. And we were building this car. We'd done all the research. on the car. We'd done rocket testing. We were the first ever to use computational fluid dynamics to look at the aerodynamics. And basically, we then had a portfolio of documentation which showed that we could do it. It was going to be safe. And at that time, all the big companies in Britain were promoting themselves as being wonderful and brave and entrepreneurial and all the rest. So, I went around to see them all with all this, and they just ran away. They were absolutely terrified of it, which is really very sad because, of course, at that stage, we already held the world land speed record. We were probably the best to do this, and they weren't going to back us.
What did they say? Why were they terrified? What did they say, Richard?
Well, they saw the risk. They all they could imagine was a terrible car crash and the last piece of bodywork having their logo on it. I think that's as far as it goes. So what do you do? Well, if you've got something that's as valuable as that, in other words, the research, you've just got to go and do it, haven't you? To hell with all the rest of them. You've just got to get on and do it. And somewhere along the line, providing you keep batting away, you'll find a few like-minded individuals. And gradually you build an organization that can do it. That's what it's done. But all the way down the line, great difficulties with the British culture, great difficulties with the big companies who wouldn't support it. And we still have that trouble too with Bloodhound.
It's funny. I had a chance to become friends with a gentleman who runs one of the largest hedge funds in Britain. And a guy named David Harding. And it was interesting when I'd have conversations with him, he kind of cited, and I'm not trying to be political here, but he cited some American work, specifically the novel Atlas Shrugged, and just talking about that kind of go for it entrepreneurial attitude. And he somewhat was very similar to you in expressing the culture of Britain and how he was able to kind of pull himself out of it, which I think was one of the secrets to his success as well.
I think there's got to be a lot of parallel there, Michael. It certainly has. Because basically, also, the culture extends to the media, and this was an extraordinary experience we had, was that having done all the research on the car, and now here we're talking about the ThrustSSC car, so we're talking 1992, 93, the only way we can finance this is via sponsorship, and sponsorship requires, of course, a lot of media coverage, so you've got to get out and get the media coverage in order to generate the interest, in order to generate the money to build the car. So that's the sequence. Suddenly all our media coverage stopped. And I couldn't understand this. This is a fantastic situation. You're building the world's first supersonic car. You've got a real chance of pulling this thing off. And suddenly all your media coverage stops. So I got in the car and I raced around to see whole lot of editors and anybody who would see me and the BBC and all the rest. And the result of all these meetings was fascinating. They simply said, do you know, they said, it's too complicated for us. It's niche engineering. It's high technology. Our readers won't understand this, and so therefore it's not for us. But they said when the thing starts to run, when you start to run that car with all the noise and the flame and violence and everything else, we'll be there for you. But during the build, that's not for us. So consequently, our business plan was a complete mess. We didn't know what the hell to do. And we were saved by the Digital Corporation of America, who came around the corner and said, we're looking for show websites. This was 1992. And I said to them, what's a website? And they explained it. I thought, well, that's really interesting. It's a one-to-one communication. That's what we should do. We'll open a new front. We'll bypass conventional media. So we started putting a website together with the digital guys, and they were really interested and very, very helpful. And they started promoting it all over the world. And we didn't know what to do with this website, what to put on it. So we started getting the engineers and everybody in the team to write on the website and explain what was going on and what they were doing and how they were tackling their day-to-day problems. And so that was what we did. We got a series of blogs there. And then suddenly the website took off big time, started to grow at an enormous rate. And we could then do something that the BBC couldn't do at that stage, which was go into the website and interrogate it and find out what they were all reading. And Michael, what they were reading was the technical pages. And this is absolutely amazing. So we said, right, well, let's give them as much technical stuff as we possibly can. So we gave them 800 pages of technology on the project. And the website grew to be the 5th largest in the world, bigger than all motorsport, football, all the rest. It's absolutely fascinating. And of course, your conventional media is 180 degrees out of phase. They're doing the wrong thing. Public absolutely love technology.
The public loves details, and I've seen this in my world too, explaining the nitty-gritty of my world. But you're right, and I've had very parallel experiences with the web. And traditional media just wants to give these general headlines, assuming that the masses are essentially ignorant fools, or just have no interest or no knowledge or no desire. But then you
Michael,
go ahead.
You're so right. You're absolutely right. They dumb down in order to, and it's a dumb down culture, in order to hope to get the massive audience. But they're going the wrong way, but they don't risk it. They don't change.
But what's nice is about in your experience too, is you find you think, okay, I have this niche world as defined by major media. However, when your niche world is exposed to free distribution, i.e. the internet, all of a sudden you find that your niche is filled with some very powerful, passionate people.
Absolutely. And of course, an awful lot of people in the wrong jobs who've got real interests in other fields and so on, and want to share them. So it's a great privilege. It really is.
Well, let me as we wind down here, let me ask, where is everything right now? We're getting you. I know you want to break. You want your team to break 1,000 miles an hour. That's where we are. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So where does it all stand? What deadlines are we looking at? Where does everything stand right now?
Well, it was an extraordinary story, the whole thing, and perhaps I better spend a few minutes on it, Michael, to explain. What actually happened was Andy Green had driven ThrustSSC, and I'd led the project, and together we'd broken the sound barrier, and we were very, very proud of that achievement. Interestingly, it got no response from the government in Britain. Andy got a medal of some sort, but there was nothing for the engineers or anything, which made me really sick, because it was a phenomenal team achievement. I mean, it really was. Anyhow, so then what happens is Steve Fossett, the late and very great Steve Fossett, decides he's going to go for the world land speed record. And he represents a real challenge to us because Steve, of course, he's no longer with us, but he had the money, the resource, the determination, motivation, the lot. He could do this. So Andy and I decided what we would do is, rather than wait and see what Steve would get up to, is to kind of head him off at the pass and create the ultimate car. So that's what we set out to do. We agreed with Ron Ayres, who's the aerodynamicist. Without Ron, we go nowhere. That the peak speed or the record speed we'd head for is 1,000 miles an hour, Mach 1.4. And of course, this was met with incredibility by the aerospace community in Britain. Because, I mean, this car goes 200 miles an hour faster than our best fighter at 3,000 feet. So we are actually getting the same position as the industry was in the 1920s, when actually the cars went faster than the airplanes. So that's all real interesting stuff. Anyhow, we had Andy fixed up a meeting with a minister in the Ministry of Defense responsible for all the purchasing. We had this great meeting, and our objective was to chat him up and separate him from a very modern jet engine called an EJ200. It didn't go very well, Michael, and it was a very friendly meeting, but when I asked the minister for the engine, there was a terrible silence. He didn't really see that coming. But what he did was he gave us an incredible lead. And he said, look, we have a real problem in the Ministry of Defense. We can't recruit engineers because there aren't any. We said, what? He said, yeah, there are no engineers. It seems that what had happened was that the media had sort of focused on the soft stuff for so long. In other words, that's basically the singing and the dancing and the cooking and all that stuff for so long that the kids had sort of lost sight of the really exciting bits of life. And the minister went on to say that during the Cold War era, basically everybody was producing these fantastic airplanes, and we produced, the Concorde and the Lightning and the Vulcan bomber and the TSR-2 and everything, fantastic products. And the kids would see them flying over because, of course, this was a wartime activity and all these things were out on sorties. And they were wildly inspired by what was going on. And that resulted in a steady supply of scientists and engineers. So the interesting thing here was the minister then said to us, tell you what, he said, what I want is an iconic project like yours run through every school in the country to create us a new generation of scientists and engineers. And so this seemed to me the only way we could make the minister happy. So I shook his hand and told him we'd do it. We then started studying all this, and we came across this fantastic graphic which shows the huge surge in conferring of PhDs in the US from 1962 to 72. It sort of grew by a factor of about 300%, massive growth. And that was almost certainly linked directly with the US manned space program, otherwise known, of course, as the Apollo effect. And so we decided we'd try and work along these lines. And it's been hugely successful, Michael. We now have 5,400 schools in Britain on it. We've got over probably about 2 million school kids studying it. So it's going to create a very large number of engineers. And in the US, you have exactly the same problems. And in a lot of countries around the world, the media have been doing the same thing, and thus not giving the kids any real sort of inspiration at all. It's all been this virtual fakery. Anyhow, so that's one side of it. And that meant, therefore, that our sponsors got CSR benefits, corporate and social responsibility benefits, which are very important to them. And we went through an enormous phase of research, which took 55 man-years, using 3 of the largest high-performance computing clusters in Europe, thanks to our good friends at Intel who made all this possible. And now we're into the build of the car, and we're about halfway through. So if you went to the workshop now, you'd see it's beginning to look like a car. Very difficult program. We did get the jet engine in the end, thanks to Rolls-Royce. We've also had to develop our own rocket motor, so this is a huge program. It's all really coming together. We're going to have the car in Q2 2015. We've also cleared an entire desert in South Africa. So we've got a 12-mile run there, which is, I think, probably one of the best in the world. So all that's done. Our sponsor, our local South African sponsor, MTM, is putting up the huge 200-foot radio mast now, so we can take the data from the car and connect it straight up into the internet. So around the world, all the schools can get all the data from the car each time it runs, and they can study it. So it's going to create an enormous number of scientists and engineers worldwide. At the moment, we're in 220 countries. The only countries we're not in, as far as I make out, are North Korea, which is what you might expect, and Vatican City. So that's a bit surprising, but there we go.
I love the idea that maybe some of the passion in engineering that has disappeared in the last couple decades that you're trying to bring back. You seemingly laid it right at the feet of boy bands.
Yeah, exactly right. Absolutely right. So you're
telling me that boy bands are not good for males that are looking to become engineers, even ladies that want to become engineers. Boy bands are just the downfall of society, perhaps.
Absolutely. I don't see the connection. Do you?
No. I think maybe if they could be eliminated, that'd be a good thing. Hey, listen, I want to let you wrap up here. What is it? Because for people, I know people are going to listen and they're going to want to kind of check out what you're doing, get involved, read, maybe even make some donations. So where is the best place where they can start the website, the main spot, Richard?
Yeah, the main spot is the website, www.bloodhoundssc.com. And there's an awful lot of material on there. We're also on Facebook and Twitter, etc. But the main thing is the website. And we're also starting a reciprocal website called Blast, which will in due course enable people to upload their own material and communicate with each other. So it's going to be a big international thing. We're going to be operational in 2015 when we want to go supersonic, and 2016 when we want to get to 1,000. That's the plan. It won't work out like that, but that's the plan.
Well, I think it's awesome, and I think for anybody out there that's wandering around saying I can't do this, I can't do that, I don't know what to do. I think sometimes you just got to wake up and say, you said as a 6-year-old boy, a lot of people have dreams when they're little kids, and for whatever reason they let go of them. Maybe society dumbs them down, society scares them.
Yep.
But I think it's really nice for people to hear from someone like yourself to say, hey, all that stuff is nonsense. You've got to follow your passion. You got to follow your dreams. And if you don't, you could be one of those guys sitting on the couch at 70 years old going, what did I do during my life?
Yeah, absolutely, Michael. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Well, listen, hey, it was great having you on today. And I look forward to following your pursuit of the record.
Thank you, Michael. I really appreciate this. It was a great fun conversation. And thank you again.
Take care. I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.